Welcome back, Mr. Mittal. Sorry, the problem was at our end.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine, Amit.
Very warm welcome once again, Mr. D.K. Mittal, who topped the IAS 1977 UP cadre. Courtesy people like him, India is now in a position wherein it can challenge the likes of China, US, Japan, and Germany, wherein and Russia, as far as the economic superpower contention is concerned, because Mr. Mittal, people like Mr. Mittal have contributed immensely as a bureaucrat over the last 45 years of their tenure as a bureaucrat and as a citizen. 75th year of India's independence, Modi ji announced it on the 12th of March 2021, Amrit Mahotsav celebrations. We are towards the end of it. Arun Megwal, the current culture minister of state, announced that this is going to be extended for another year. The Amrit Mahotsav is going to be now continued till 2023 August. And then we step into the Amrit Kal, the next 25 years, that is the final quarter of the centenary celebration of India's independence, glorious history, a country which has got thousands of years behind it, culturally, economically, socially, politically, and it was once upon a time a leader economically as well. Mr. Mittal now heads board of director of many companies, independent director into Airtel, a behemoth which connects India across the world. Mr. Mittal, over to you. Take us through the journey of an IAS officer from topping to retiring as secretary and now contributing as a citizen from the corporate perspective. Over to you, Sri D.K. Mittal.
Thank you, Amit. Well, it's a great thing to come back to history and look at what it started with. Joining the IAS was a tough call because there were a lot of opportunities to join the IITs. At that time, the admissions were happening on the basis of the marks you obtain in the IISc standard of the UP board. Also, foreign universities are available. But I think many factors had driven me to join the IAS. Well, the first thing was I realized that it is a service, it is not a job. And there's a very fundamental difference. At no point of time in my life, I realized that my schoolmates who were better off than me because they were in private sector, I never felt that feeling ever. The fact is that it was my deliberate decision to join the IAS, not that somebody compelled me to do that. And the idea was at that time, the idealism was that we must do something for the country, for ourselves as well as for the country. That's what we should do. Well, initially the journey was pleasant. And, you get first brush with the administration when you joined as the subdivision magistrate of Hapur. And then you have the first brush with the political setup when you have a meeting of the then leader of opposition getting disturbed because of certain factor beyond your control, and you get transferred from there. But that's fine. It was taken in stride, and you realize that you did the right thing, and everybody supporting the administration, but the transfer has to come, so that's fine. But the second important lesson was that how do you put up a matter to the political setup? It is very important to say, it is very important to say right thing, but then how do you say right thing? That's very important. It has to be said in a context, in a manner in which those who matter in democracy, that the political master, they understand. And you could have any examples of that. So the second fact, which I realized very soon in life, that it is very important to tell the truth, but tell the truth in a manner which is palatable to those who are governing the country or the state. And one's experience has been that if you put it up properly, in almost every situation, this was accepted, in almost every situation. Whether it was the level of the state minister or the chief minister of the state or the central minister, that is as powerful as finance minister or commerce minister, where I worked in Government of India. I never find an occasion where a point of view which was very strong and in the larger interest of the country was put up and it was not accepted. The fact was that it was put up in a manner which the political leader could understand the implications of it. It was never to oppose the minister's decision. It was to tell the minister that this is the issue and these are the implications, and therefore they should not be done. So that is the second lesson which I learned, and I stood by that throughout my life. The third part is that to do the right thing has a cost. It never comes free. You do right thing and you would have a cost, but you should be ready with that. You should not regret about it. The system tests you once, twice, thrice, and if they find you do not bend, they give you the way. They give you the way everywhere, but they test you. And after that, they say, this fellow is incorrigible. is straight and no integrity issue, and therefore he will tell the truth, he will do the right thing, and that's what you are required. And in administration, you are required many times. This kind of species are required many times. So they need you and they will use you. That's fine. But I again come back that the spirit has to be of service, not of a job. You should always remember that you are here like a soldier standing on the frontiers, fighting in Kashmir, and he also has a choice to run away from there. He also has a choice to let the enemy come in. So if we are sitting in our air-conditioned rooms in the bureaucracy, we are much better off. And if I get transferred because of that, so let it be. But we should guard the right thing in a very proper manner. And the next thing is that, as bureaucrat, you need to evolve. You need to look at future. Unfortunately, political leadership is not that evolved. Unfortunately, most of them cannot look for future. But it is the bureaucracy which really need to look at that and just guide them. In fact, to that extent, educate them about it, that what are the options available. And one has done that any number of times. Look into future ideas, sell those ideas to them in a very righteous spirit without any agenda, and then take them on board. So this is the role of the bureaucracy. See, something which I'll tell you example, that digitization one has been doing since 1985. At that time, nobody used to talk of digitization, computers, nobody used to talk. But one could pursue that and get it at different levels, whether it is a local body like Allahabad Municipal Corporation, or it is the ministries of corporate industry or the state industry department, where you could automate to it could be done. I mean, you are doing one of the that you have to drive it to. I have my colleagues who have worked in DGFT and they did a wonderful job. So you have examples where officers have performed so excellently. It is a different thing that never recognized, but that's not the purpose of the officers to be recognized. We are not public figures. We are here to be silent workers like soldiers of the army or the air force who are fighting on the borders. So the next point I'll explain that one need to feel happy that you're doing a good job. One never feels that in the evening you ever have a sleepless night on the night. Because A, there was nothing in your back, and secondly, you're no interest to remain a job. So they place you somewhere else, doesn't matter. In one of the assignments, when one posted, I was advised by somebody who's very, respected by me, that you must talk to a minister before you take a decision. And I debated on that and said, that's not workable. Because if I do not agree and minister says, do this, then I'm committed to do that. So I said, no, I don't care. If the minister transfers me, so fine, let it be. I'll take the way I like it. And of course, in a very positive spirit, never to confront the minister. The idea is never to confront or to make an issue for something which need not to be an issue. So one feels that, the journey is tough, and it is very fine to sit here after retirement, but it is tough. But that's what the service is for. So another thing I like to say that many of us claim that I was very honest, I was very hardworking, but that's the job you're supposed to be paid for. Honesty is not something you're doing a charity or doing something extra. I mean, honesty has to be with you. There's no choice. If you're not honest to your job, honesty does not mean that you're not taking money or you're not taking bribes. It is also that you're sincere to your job. Are you doing a job properly? Are you really contributing what you have to be contributing? Are you really doing those reforms which country needs and which you could facilitate? So if we are honest to ourselves and we are honest to job, I do not find any challenge. Even today's environment, which is much tough than what it used to be 10 years back, it's much tough today because of various conditions. So it is not that you cannot deliver it out. You can always deliver it out. So my feeling is that there is no service in the world which is parallel to the IS. And that to that extent stands for the IFS and it stands for the IPS. There are no services of that nature. And IS stands tall apart because the kind of exposure, experience, and public connect you get is not there in any other service in the world. There is no other service. People do not like it. Yes, I agree with them. But the reasons for that are different than really blaming the officers. The reasons are we have changed the age to 32 years. A person who comes with 30, we all joined the service at 23, 24 years. If I joined, I would have joined at 32 years. I would have been married. I would have been having 2 kids, and my expectation from job or the service would be totally different. So when you blame the IS, and which I hear very regularly now, vis-a-vis what we joined in 1977, is a fundamental difference. There's a fundamental difference. The service has undergone a change because the because the inputs which are coming. See, service stands as it is today with the inputs. So you regret that a service which used to stand tall at the time when you joined the service perhaps cannot stand that way because of the change in the intake, quality of the intake, the age of the intake. I mean, so to say, not the quality, but the age of the intake. So you feel sad about it, very sad about it, because that has a larger public implication. A bad service of IAS, IPS, or IFS really have an impact on every common man. A bad district superintendent of police or a bad district magistrate or a bad ambassador of any embassy is not good for the country perspective, is not good for the country's citizens. So I think you feel very sad that the service which you were having the first rank after joining the academy, and you feel that that service and the other colleague services are not being respected in the sense which they should be doing. That's a serious regret I have. And because of, and along with that, you feel that the downslide in the level of the competence and integrity is very high. Not to finger point on anybody, but it is a direct relation to the age, entry age. You know, Pluto has said that take the civil service officers young. Maybe his suggestion was take them at 14, 15 years, educate them, train them, and they should not have any families. He went to that extent. They have no families. Detach them from their families. So they have no chance of, doing anything wrong or thinking anything wrong. But that's an approach. But the first point is valid, that take them young. So that's a serious regret I have in life, that the service has gone to that level. I, having worked in the state government of UP as well as the government of India, in Ministry of Commerce, in Ministry of Corporate Affairs, in Ministry of Finance, I think one enjoyed every day. Your interaction at the highest level of the government, your interaction with the regulators, and there was always many times difference of opinions. But I do not think there was any confrontation. There's no. We had difference of opinion, we persisted with that, and many times you could persuade them, many times you could not persuade them. But that's what the service is meant for. So I enjoyed every bit of the service when I was working, and really I cherished those memories very sweetly. But then life has to go along, and every good thing has to come to an end. So it is like that.
Let me now, I already have noted some, mentally some questions from your extempore monologue till now. Firstly, what is it that makes you, confront a minister? Or if there is, if I may say, suppose there is a difference of opinion, why do you think the difference of opinion generally happens when it comes to political vis-a-vis bureaucratic thought process? And if there is a difference of opinion, then you say you stick to your own guard. Now, do you think that this is something which should be used as a formula by the aspiring or the fresh or the new breed of IAS officers who come to the picture?
So yes, this is a very good ask, because that's one of the problems faced by the members of the service. See, there are going to three, four scenarios. One scenario when there is a policy decision being taken by the minister. So an example, see, working in a cement factory, they were lifers. Those who were life representatives, they were working as labor and mining the stones. That is for the cement factory. Somehow the idea came to the minister, the labor minister, that these fellows should be made regular. He called a meeting. One came there attending the meeting. When minister persisted, so one said that, sir, today you are labor minister, tomorrow you could be industry minister. And sir, would you agree that what you're suggesting should be done? He paused for a second, 10 seconds. He said, okay, we'll come back to you. So the question was to put to the minister that, sir, you are labor minister, but you are minister for labor, not you are labor minister. You could be minister for industry, or you could be, I said, sir, even you could be CM. So what? So would you take this decision if you're there? The second situation was when a minister wanted to take a decision because he had an interest in that, because of somebody's, so to say, lobbying. So there you have to put differently. Okay, sir, if it is done, these are the implications. And put them in black and white. In almost no case, minister will be able to approve it. He will say, please discuss, please speak, take legal opinion. That's it, fine. See, the winning is not in getting the idea dead. The winning is that the idea should not be pursued further, or it should not be implemented. In one case, one minister wanted, in financial services, in corporate affairs, sorry, minister wanted somebody to be paid a salary because there the salary approval used to come to the ministry, which is exorbitant. It was beyond policy. So used the same policy trick, sir, it is done. It will be objectionable. Tomorrow you're in front line and they are rich fellows. Why they want so much salary from a loss-making companies? So I think you have to use tricks of the public policy. And in one case, there was a huge pressure from the US to get the certain concession given in the WTO. Somehow they convinced the minister. Minister called a meeting and we put our foot down. Okay, sir, this is not done. We will be devastated. We are not America. If we reduce the tariff to the level of America, as America wants, then the country is gone. I think one minister understood the point, and he really see that way. He understood the point and said, "Okay, we go with you." See, then what should be done? I said, "This is the way forward." So idea was not to block it, but also give a way out to the minister. If a minister has been cornered, then you have to give a way out to the minister. So he said, "This is what we should do." He said, "Okay, fine," and we took responsibility. So it is our responsibility to convince the Americans that what they are pursuing is not good, and we ultimately succeeded in doing that. So the question is that when there's a matter being pursued by anybody at the top level, you have to say it very politely but firmly with facts and figures and bring public policy, public interest, national interest in view very correctly, without any agenda. See, the mistake some of us commit is when we react to minister and giving an agenda all the time. If a minister says, do this, that does not mean he has taken money. It's not correct to assume that. Our point is that if minister is saying something, if it's correct, it should be done. If not correct, we should say these are the implications, it cannot be done. If there's a gray area and there's something which is feasible to be done, we should try to do that out. But something which is illegal, irregular, which is smack of corruption, absolutely put a foot down. And in that matter, if you put your head on chopper, so let it be. Because somebody has to be chopped. If there is a chopper to happen, then your head should be chopped because you are the person. So dealing with ministers, one has never found tough because one has never, there was not a situation when a right point was never agreed by the minister. I'm yet to find it. That's a different thing that they got you out after some time, that's fine. But at least during your tenure, they could not get a wrong thing done from you. And my point of view always was, it is I who sign myself. How can anybody sign for me? It is I who have to send a note myself with the recommendation. Nobody can send for me. See, if that nobody can send, I'm not concerned about what others say. It's my responsibility. I'll take full responsibility and I'll do that way. So it is the commitment of yours to the job or to the service, which is very important. And if you do that and you have a right way to present to ministers or to political bosses, 99% time you will succeed. 99%. And 1% always you may not succeed. Doesn't matter.
Looks very, comfortable to hear this. This looks very linear when I hear this out, but it's a very, very unenviable position, what you're describing, because you people are, transferred, or you people get into so many different kind of departments and ministries throughout your career, wherein people who have extensive experience in the areas that you are, probably there for a couple of years, and there you have to understand the system in and out and then present yourself, especially when against the tide. How do you guys manage it as people who are just, just passing by over a couple of years? And there have been people who are there in that system for 40 years, 50 years. They understand the nitty-gritties in and out much more than you. Then how are you people able to, or is it that the options are very straight so that you can, had there been any other honest officer, he could have done the same thing? That is, does it take something very special for an IAS officer to really present a case in such a way, in such a short span of time? What is that makes the difference?
So the training of the IAS, the way training, I do not mean the classroom training, the training as you evolve in first 6 years of time is very different. See, in nowhere in the world, you would be commanding a district of about 30 lakh population and taking responsibility for everything. And therefore, you're stressed to the maximum. Secondly, you are exposed to almost all business departments of the government, every business department, whether it is road construction or power supply, or is rural development, is panchayat raj, is fisheries, is animal husbandry, every department you are exposed to. And that exposure of SDM and DM is very unique. That gives you very great advantage when you talk to any vertical or any specialist. The second thing is when you are heading a district, you have to perforce decide and decide yourself. See, one was privileged to be in UP, where the CM would never know the names of all district magistrates. There's no chance. It is not like a smaller state where the CM would know even the Tehsildar. The chief minister will never know. Even the chief secretary cannot remember names of all 80 district magistrates. It will be a good chief secretary and the chief minister will remember the names of the divisional commissioners. So in that anonymity, there's a great thing. You decide things on your own, and therefore you're forced to take decisions. And therefore that develops the culture of you become decisive. And that helps you. So with this understanding and with this nature of being decisive, and also the capability and capacity to coordinate between divergent resources. You have a conflict between the labor department versus the PW department, everybody else, and you are coordinating with them. Now, with that kind of experience, you go, and that serves you everywhere. That serves you everywhere. In whichever setup you go, it will serve you everywhere.
But things I think now have changed, because now it's been made compulsory for the fresh IS officers. I do not know the exact situation, but you could be somebody who could tell us much more. I mean, 5 years in the central government or deputation in the center there is some clause change from the IS trainings. They all need to get exposed to and get aligned with the center's mindset and processes. And instead of getting into the DM and the field levels, they have to be they have to start working with the central government. There are some changes. Could you throw some light on that?
So no, that change remains that they are encouraged to come to Government of India. Earlier, it was not mandated. Now the government is insisting that you come to Government of India before you become a director, become a joint secretary, all that. But the initial placement in the state government remains same, that you become a district magistrate in 6 years' time. 6 to 8 years' time, depending upon the state and the kind of, the number of districts are there, the number of offices are there. So that will remain same. And that exposure to be acting as a district magistrate is very unique, and it's very, very enriching to you as a service officer.
Now, let me go back almost 45 years. How does one top? I mean, any examination is fine, but UPSC, how do you top that? And what goes into your mind? I mean, I was talking to General VK Singh, let me make it very clear. And then I have a host of services, the top brass who are part of the forum. I interact with most of them, be it Air Forces, be it the Army, Territorial Army, be it the Navy. And to become the admiral of a Navy or become the Air Chief Marshal of the Air Forces or the general, there are probably 90 lieutenant generals appointed every year. One person gets the general's position. There are 270 major generals appointed. But general is just one out of the batch of IMA or out of the batch of the NDA when it gets bifurcated into IMA and Air Force Academy and others. Finally, one person becomes the general. And then, IAS officer lakhs, 7 lakh, 8 lakh boys and girls appear for it. And then you top, I mean, you're the number 1 rank holder. How do you become that? I mean, what goes into the mind of an IAS topper? The world has to know this.
So, Amanji, is a very, at that point of time, technology was not there to the extent as it is today. It was a lot of hard work. You spend quite a bit of work, and since I took all science papers, so it was still tougher. Taking higher physics, higher mathematics is not easy to do that. You're only doing MSc physics. So I don't think there's anything except hard work and doing a lot of, I started from a very humble background. I was not a convent educated person. So the English used to be, as it could happen with a Hindi medium student. But then it is the hard work which translated from there to, learn the English well, write the English well, speak the English well. So it happens that way, and that is the hard work which has to happen. There's no choice. And of course, some amount of luck. It doesn't happen. Hard work alone does not work. You have to have some luck, and God has to be with you.
Does being from the from the backward classes, from the reservation classes, does it make any difference when it comes to such UPSC exams?
No, I don't think so. So I had service colleagues who were from reserve category and they were outstanding, not in my batch, but in the other batches also. So you have different persons who are outstanding, there's no issue. Many of them, they are parallel to any other general class officer, so I don't find any distinction between that. But that's fine. And many of the general class officers are worse than some of the reserve class officers. I don't think this distinction is really right to say that. They are human.
I was just recently today only probably I was going through the profile of one lady who is an IS officer in Telangana. She's the secretary of the CM. Forgot her name, but she came from a commerce background, just out of college, commerce background, age of 22. Ranked fourth in the UPSC. I mean, does that kind of thing also happen? You beat IITians, you beat people with zoology toppers of universities and everybody, and then you just from a humble commerce background at an age of 22 you just top the UPSC, top 5 of the UPSC. Is that also possible?
Yeah, 100% possible. In my batch also there were IIMs and IIT graduates, but they were not there at top, so that doesn't matter. See, it is the amount of work which you do and the systematically how do you study that work. It's not cramming which works, it is a systematic working. And I mean, those times there used to be papers of higher and lower and all that. Now all that has gone. There are separate papers for the IS, so all that has gone. But in those times, the preparation was very different. And it used to be very thorough, you used to work it out. So I'll still say that the same applies to the pattern which I've seen today, that hard work, there's no exception, no solution to hard work and hard work and hard work. And of course, some amount of luck. Both have to go together.
I am happy that you bring that factor, even though very, very, what do you call, it could be something which is non-measurable, but it is a very important factor. I'm happy that being an IS topper and then also somebody who served at the highest echelons of bureaucracy, you admitted, because when people go through such successes and such highs in career as you have, people generally, take it, take the entire credit on themselves, and that is something which is very humble of yourself. Now, coming to the, your stint as an IS officer, I mean, what were the different departments that you handled? You were the you were the Department of Financial Services Secretary. You were also into the Corporate Affairs Ministry. So, what are the different ministries you worked with in the state as well as the central government? And then we'll come to different questions on that.
So state government, I worked in the Ministry of Industry, in the Department of Industry, Department of Agriculture, then in the Department of Trading. So these are the three, apart from being district magistrate, and also the local bodies, the Municipal Commissioner Allahabad, so that's the local body job. In Government of India, I spent time in commerce, corporate affairs, and financial services.
Commerce, Corporate Affairs, and Department of Financial Services.
And also I spent time in renewable energy in state government.
Please come again, sir.
Renewable energy.
Renewable energy.
Spent time in that.
Okay.
And I think everything was very enriching to me personally.
Now you also worked under various regimes, because 77, just out of emergency days.
Correct.
We just came out of emergency.
Yeah, that's right. We had the Janata Sarkar, then we came the Congress Sarkar, then we have the BJP Sarkar, then we had in between the coalition government of Mulayam Singh ji and BJP, everybody, then we have the BJP Sarkar, then we have the president rule, then we have Mayawati ji Sarkar, then we have Mulayam Singh ji Sarkar, then we have again Congress, BJP, Mayawati ji Sarkar. So we have seen all combinations.
You must have worked under approximately, I think, all the prime ministers, right from Indira Gandhi ji's time.
No, but no, that time I was not in center. When I came to Delhi, late Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji was the prime minister, and then of course Manmohan Singh ji was prime minister. So they were the two prime ministers during my time, my stay in Delhi. So
you really worked under the two most strongest names that we have in our recent memories. People who are at least, could be, what you call, everybody was very important. Everybody has been great. Probably Narasimha Rao ji, according to me, did a great job. Now, if I compare the leadership styles of the two prime ministers you worked with, Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, probably for 5-6 years you worked with him, and then with Dr. Manmohan Singh sir, for approximately say, I must have worked with him for almost 7 to 8 years.
Yeah.
How would you compare the leadership styles of the two prime ministers and the two governments?
See, one that, being joint secretary and additional secretary, you have little interaction at that level, very little interaction. Only as secretaries, you have interaction with the prime minister. And that interaction I had with Dr. Manmohan Singh ji, and I found him always a very nice person, very pleasant person, ready to listen and express his views. So as secretaries used to interact with him, sometimes you would be called there to discuss something, sometimes you want to tell him something. And for some time, briefly, he was also directly looking at the finance portfolio, then you have more interaction with him. But I had a minister in corporate affairs, I had not hesitated naming him. And I am yet to find a minister like him, though generally people don't say that way, Mr. Murli Devra. Late Mr. Murli Devra was an ideal leader, I'll say. There won't be a week when he will not call me to President for lunch, not a week. And I have yet to remember an example where he really asked anything wrong to be done, except one example which I told you, for salary remuneration, and ultimately he agreed with me. And he gave you full freedom to reform the ministry. Do automation, do whatever you want, do. Businessmen should not be running in the corridors of ministry, which is done. They will not. Their salaries are delegated, they'll let them go to the AGM. We said we'll have video conferencing done. We permitted AGM to be done video conferencing. We said don't publish these big reports, put only the average portion. So he said do any reform. When we wanted to do this Competition Act, and this merger acquisition thing was pending for many years, we discussed with him and he was kind enough to say, go ahead. And then we had a call with all senior industry leaders and convinced them that we are here with you. If you have a problem, call us up, it will resolve. And that is why this notification was issued. Otherwise, this was pending for last 10 years. So I'm yet to find a minister like Mr. Murli Devra who would be so affectionate and give you so much of freedom and won't ask you to do anything. But that's unfortunately is not generally the impression. That's the unfortunate part. Late Mr. Murli Devra.
Corruption, your views, over the last 10 years of the almost 8 plus years of the current Modi government, there have been very sweeping changes. Now, if I come to the contemporary issues, so I'd just like to touch upon them because from a bureaucrat as well as from a former secretary's perspectives, you think there has been some very good positive changes over the last 8 years of the current government? And what are those changes which really demand or which have really demanded your attention, and you really feel that these are changes which Mr. Modi has brought about, his government has brought about, which probably takes the country forward in a much better way?
See, there are two parts to the one, the changes in the policy, which I don't think I'm anybody to comment on that. The second part is how the structure, how the government or the administrative system works. Now, that is where the government has introduced direct lateral entry, which is an experiment which has been tried earlier, and they're still trying it. That's very fine, because new things should be tried. But what needs to be done is basically to see that how you have the quality of the officers intake, in how the quality improves. That, I think, is a serious question. And this is not applied to IS, this is applied to all services. I think there's a serious question mark before the nation about the quality of intake of the officers. And it is a real problem. If we wish it away, we are going to have a system which really will not be functioning. And this is not a reflection on anybody. This is a reflection on the way the recruitment is being done. So everybody is outstanding, but if they are being selected in a way that ultimately they have no motivation to work in a way which is required from them to be done, then they can't help it. So my serious question is, we have brought the age to 32 years. That's phenomenally wrong. Phenomenally wrong. Nowhere in the world you have the first level entry at 32 years. There's no country in the world where you have a civil servant. And I say civil servant, not IS officers, whether it's foreign service, IS or whatever it is. There's nobody where an entry happens at 32. That's a serious problem. which I think the government must wake up to that. It is going to create many issues at some stage.
Some key changes you brought about as a corporate affairs secretary?
I said, lot many things like salary approval used to come to us. We said, done with it. Like Competition Act notified, like video conferencing done, digitization done. Lot many rules were simplified. Lot many badges were removed. So I think we did lot in that. The registration during my tenure was to 24 hours. A company's name registration used to take 24 hours. And we learned that from Singapore. So we could do that. India could do that.
And as the DFS secretary, because banking sector, is now playing an inextricable role as far as the growth story, India growth story is concerned. Your recommendations, even during your time, you had some sweeping changes you made, and there were timelines given to the bankers, especially the PSU banks and the behemoths like LIC. They were running for cover during your time. Not delve deep into that story, but just a few lines about your tenure as a DFS secretary.
So DFS, I mean, one of the most complicated ministry I could say is the DFS. We have such a large number of PSUs where you take time, to understand them out. But changes, I think I'll say there are a number of changes which are basically our role was how do we govern them out? We make the system process transparent and govern them out. A simple change. A successor CMD was posted 15 days before as the OSD in the bank. The moment you joined, one of the problems was the successor predecessor problem. We said, okay, boss, you're posted 15 days before as OSD, either you as ED as OSD or the CMD as OSD. You sit with the predecessor, sort out the issues, and let there be no predecessor success issue. So after this, we did this. There was never a problem that my predecessor did this because they were sitting there. Or the tenure of the bankers going abroad. I said it should be 5 years. Why should it be 3 years? Why should it be 2 years? So I think we did the reforms of this nature. How many EDs should be in the bank? This was not in some small bank. There were 3 EDs. In large bank there were 2 EDs, and PNB staff used to complain, which is very right. So we rationalized that out. I think we did a number of steps which are basically in the area of human resource. Then we worked on technology development. We were the first one to have a reverse price bidding for ATMs in all banks, aggregated them into area. And we got a price of 4 rupees, 5 rupees per transaction, while the cost of the transaction to PSU banks was about 10 to 12 rupees. So we did that innovation. The whole BC network syndication, the BC network development, which is agnostic to any technology, was also done by us. We did all that in that time. So it is your responsibility when on the desk to see that the country moves forward. That's your responsibility. You're not doing charity. There's no ihsan on anybody. You are being paid by the government. You are being made to sit there to deliver this out. And this is your job to look for future. And look what's not in the interest of the public. So that's your job. So reforms too, you can do too many reforms. I mean, DF is such a happening department. You can do, and I must appreciate both the ministers, late Mr. Pranab Mukherjee and presently Mr. Chidambaram. I never had any problem with them. If there's a difference of opinion, it was put up very correctly, and 99% they agreed with me. I mean, I yet to find an example where my point I feel was right, and they did not agree with that. 99% they agreed. One and off evidence is, situation could arise when you are perhaps not right in saying that.
Mr. Modi has been emphasizing quite a bit on the fastness or the alacrity of the decisions to be taken, and also on the independence that is being meted out to the bureaucrats. But in the wake of the current changes in the legal position with respect to the bureaucracy's answerability, wherein RTI, Lokpal, CVC, they have been empowered to such an extent. Do you think that the bureaucracy in India, with a democracy, with a democratic setup, and these kind of instruments at the mercy of the public at large, do you think the bureaucracy is in a very, very enviable position, Mr. Mittal?
So why should I feel afraid if I'm doing the right thing? If somebody wants to ask an RTI, so let he or she ask. If I'm doing the right thing, why should I be afraid? See, I should be afraid only if I'm not doing the right thing or I'm not taking a decision. Either way, I'll feel afraid. So one never felt afraid. The RTA was there in our time. It was active in that time. And they used to ask in RTA, and we had no problem in saying that this has been done, this has been done, this has not been done. But if we are hiding anything and not deciding anything on the issue which is pending before you, or we are taking wrong decisions, then I think you should be worried about RTA. Otherwise, why should you be worried about RTA?
Finally, sir, there are public sector companies wherein IS officers are, for example, Coal India. Now, it's a company which is a completely technically, it's a technical behemoth which on which the nation's resources, the nation's future banks, even now, despite India and the global world moving towards renewable energy and other things, and the coal depletion is a very important factor from the sustainability perspective as far as the Prime Minister's alignment with the global leaders is concerned. At the same time, the IS officers, they go and start heading these companies as chairman and managing directors, wherein they have a battery of leaders who worked in these companies at top positions for the last 30, 35, 40, 36 years of their career. Do you think these IS officers over the period of 2, 3 years, right from their cadre, landing up into the hot seat of these top behemoths is something which is good for the nation and for these companies?
So this is a question, and it has to be looked at very dispassionately. You see, if you look at all institutions of this country, public sector, they were created by the IS officers, including the State Reserve Bank. So it is very fine to say that these institutions are created, but they know they are not being run well. So it is not a correct thing to say. Secondly, at top level, you require a lot of capacity and capability to manage others, to guide them. So suppose Coal India chairman should know generally how coal is taken out and how it's processed, all that he should know. But the nitty-gritty of that he's not supposed to know. He's supposed to know whether he has the right men, whether they have the right vision, whether they are rightly oriented. That's what is to be done. The problem, you see, this is a global study done now, generalist versus specialist. And it has been found, documented by all institutes, that generalists are better than specialists when they are heading any organization. It is proven. I don't think any dispute on that out. Well, we may agree, may not agree. And the examples of specialists studying any organizations, see, if there are specialists who are the caliber of a generalist, they will do well. But if there's a specialist who is a specialist only, not a generalist, he will have a problem. He won't be able to manage because he will get into the job or get to the task of his subordinates who are specialists, who are supposed to be looking at that. So the question is that if you are heading as an IS officer, any specialist organization, you are supposed to be managing the organization. You are not supposed to be doing the nitty-gritty of it. So I find if you select right IS officers, they will do very well in managing any organization. Any organization. That I have no dispute on that in my mind.
I, probably need to agree with you at this juncture. And there are many, many questions which we can keep going on and on, but we have paucity of time. And then we had agreed upon 20 minutes. We're only 45 minutes into this interview, into this beautiful monologue with you. And let me thank you. Let me thank you, Mr. Mittal. I am sure with people like you now, but, just with one more minute, sir. One final question is that bureaucrats post their, extensively plum postings and their wonderful experience. Mittal sir, are you there?
Yeah. Sorry.
Extensively plum posting, and then once they, for example, somebody retires as the chairman or the chairman of the railway board, and then within a year's time they start working with the company. There is a cooling off period. We all understand. But even if there is a cooling off period of a year or so, when they finally land up with a company which is into tendering or thousands of crores of tendering in the same sector like railways, I mean, do you think it is something which is completely mutually exclusive as far as the sectoral engagement is concerned, ministerial engagement is concerned, or do you think that such bureaucrats should not be taking up or should not be allowed to take up such assignments wherein the line of activity is similar even after the cooling off period?
Romiji, I'll tell you my philosophy that, I had occasion to join the Competition Commission's member as Secretary MC. I refused. I had occasion to, or the access to become chairman IRDA, which was available. I said no, because I am the head of the department and I cannot be joining an
private sector. I'm talking about private sector, more difficult.
I'm coming to that. The second option, you had to join a bank board. Till date, I've refused that.
Sir,
I will
thank you
not.
so much. Sir, thank you so much. I would not like to take this forward from here. You answered it in a wonderful way. This is what the topper is. Topper
Oh, thank
material
you.
is like. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.